Rex Heuermann's. This is his first court appearance since he has pled not guilty. Overall, this is his second court appearance. And as you're watching the reporters there break down, they asked several questions of that district attorney, many of which he did not answer. But one thing that he did say, and this is in regards to the hearing today in court, where the prosecution discussed the evidence that they have, he said that there is a massive amount of material to go through. The prosecution said they turned over hard drives to the defense, as well as about 2,500 pages of documents and photographs as well. The documents include autopsy reports, DNA reports, surveillance footage from the defendant's home. They say the totality of evidence includes also about 1,000 pages of records. To remind you of this case, Rex Heuermann, the suspect here, he's 59 years old. He was arrested last month in the deaths of 3 women. Their bodies were found wrapped in burlap on Gilgo Beach, and he is also the prime suspect in the death of a 4th woman. This is a case that essentially has spanned across the country now as investigators look into this. So for more, I want to bring in ABC News' Erielle Reshef and host of the Law and Crime Network, Terri Austin, as well. Thank you so much for joining us. And Erielle, you've been following this story, and as we know, what we learn about how it plays out in court today, to hear that there was a massive amount of material, I'm sure that that didn't come as a surprise to you after you spoke with his now estranged ex-wife, right, when she talked about what happened to their home as they were going through with this investigation.
Right, Kayna. So we did speak with his estranged wife, Asa Ellerup, last night. We spoke to her directly. We also spoke with her attorney, and they described the aftermath of that massive full-scale investigation that we saw at the family's property, where they had a backhoe digging up the backyard for evidence and forensics teams scanning the entire property using ground-penetrating radar in order to try to detect any anomalies under the surface. We also know Asa shared these photos with us of the inside. That's her bathtub, slashed apart. She said her couch has been ripped apart. They were looking for any kind of evidence they could possibly get their hands on. And as you heard there in the press conference, now authorities will begin the long and arduous process of processing all of that material that they've gotten out of the house and trying to figure out if they can piece together whether Rex Heuermann is connected to any other possible unsolved crimes as well. Kayna.
All right, Erielle. And Terri, what do we know about the family helping out with this, cooperating with this? How important would potentially his ex-wife's testimony even be in something like this?
I think it's important that both sides are cooperating with each other. You see the prosecution here talking about giving discovery to the other side, making sure that if there's anything exculpatory, meaning that something that will help the defense, obviously he will turn over that. It seems to me the most important part right now is this schedule. As they are investigating, as they are collecting evidence, there is going to be a rolling discovery schedule where the prosecution turns over the massive, he said it was massive amounts of information as he turns that over. So it does seem to me as though the parties are cooperating, and it does seem to me that the prosecution is trying to make sure the victims, including the wife, can speak for themselves and not intruding on their privacy.
Certainly, and Erielle, I believe the wife's defense attorney said, you know, at this point they haven't been approached in regards to her possibly testifying or anything like that. But still, when you have a chance to talk to her and to learn about what she did know or what she didn't know that might even be more important here, what did she say to you?
Well, the attorney's saying it's far too early for them to know whether or not she'll be even asked to testify. You would imagine the DAs are exploring that option. But they say that prosecutors both say this, and police, and as well as her defense attorney says that she was completely in the dark about these alleged activities that her husband was taking part in, that he used burner phones in order to contact the alleged victims, that she was out of town, according to phone records, anytime one of these killings occurred. And her attorney telling us that she was incredibly blindsided by the investigation, that at the same time you saw Rex Heuermann getting arrested at his office in New York City, at that very same moment, investigators showed up at that house, knocking on the door, and they had a warrant to come and start that search, which took about 2 weeks, and she says their life is completely in shambles now. Rex Heuermann was the sole breadwinner of this family, so she now is trying to figure out how she's going to make ends meet. And one interesting fact I learned from the defense attorney is that other families of serial killers, Kayna, have reached out to her to try to offer some sort of support.
Right, they may be the only people in the world that could possibly understand what she's going through. Right now, we want to take you live to the attorney for the suspect, who is now speaking. Take a listen.
And we're not going to try the case in the press. I doubt that any one of you for a moment have even contemplated the possibility that they have the wrong guy. So what we're going to do is we're going to defend this case in a courtroom. In the courtroom we just were in, where we have 12 fair and impartial jurors, where we have a fair and impartial judge, where words like presumption of innocence and beyond a reasonable doubt, where words like that reign every day. That's where we're going to try this case. So we're not going to try it in the press. We're going to do our due diligence. We're going to defend this case in a court of law.
How do you feel like police and authorities have the wrong guy?
All I can say is he's presumed innocent. There have been hundreds, if not thousands, of leads in this case, and we haven't even seen them yet. I know about these leads from you folks who have reported these leads for the last 10 years, 12 years. So the answer is they very well could have the wrong guy.
How do you explain the DNA link to Heuermann's wife, the Google searches, and the cell phone locating data?
Have you seen the DNA yet?
I'm asking how you...
And I'm asking you, have you...
What prosecution says links your client to these...
I haven't seen anything yet. Have you seen anything?
Well, I'm asking how you, as his lawyer, explain what the DA describes as voluminous amounts of evidence.
The government is looking to convict my client. I haven't seen anything. So I can't sit here and defend DNA and recovery of evidence and things that they claim they have until I see it. I haven't seen anything. So I'm not going to, at this point in time, I can't tell you what defects, if any, are in any of their evidence because I haven't seen it yet.
What has your client told you?
What has my client told me? He told me he didn't do this.
Mr. Brown, Mr. Brown. To the team?
Yeah, well, we're obviously, the district attorney's office has a whole office. They're the biggest law firm in this county. I'm one guy, right? So Ms. Koish is going to be co-counsel on this. We have other attorneys that I expect, excuse me, are going to be assisting on this. And just to pour through the discovery is an enormous task, but we're prepared for it. And we're going to do it. And whether it's a year and a half or 2 years, whenever that day comes, we're going to go in a court of law, and we're looking forward to defending this case.
You feel like a month chambers for quite a bit talking about the discovery process, and you heard obviously everything that's in your hands now. Can you give a sense of the amount of evidence that you have in your hands now?
So what I was provided to with today is what, and I'm not computer literate, is 8 terabytes of information. So I was told that a gigabyte is 6,000 pages, and I was told that there's 1,000 gigabytes in a terabyte. I don't know if that's true, but if it is, it's enormous.
Do you plan on going through some of the evidence before the next court date?
Of course.
All right, so you're listening now to the lawyer and the co-counsel for Rex Heuermann, who is the suspect here in these Gilgo Beach murders. I want to bring in Terri Austin. She's our legal contributor. So, Terri, we have to remind everybody here, of course, that, you know, he was matched by DNA, and that is something that his lawyer is already discussing and trying to talk about. But, Terri, in all your years of work, we know sometimes, depending on what kind of DNA evidence it is, it doesn't always hold up in court. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's right. I mean, before that DNA can actually be tested, and we heard the prosecution say it hasn't all been tested yet. We have to know for a fact that that is Heuermann's DNA, and there were 5 hairs found on the victims, and that DNA is being tested. They may have other DNA, and it could be DNA from someone else. So until we know, it's nothing definitive. And they do have evidence, but the defense counsel here is saying he doesn't have it all. He hasn't seen the discovery. He pushed back. He actually said to the reporter, have you seen the DNA? So there is cell phone, there is DNA, there's that Chevrolet car that was supposedly seen from one of the victims. And so all of that is actually going to have to be pulled together. There's going to have to be a timeline. Right now, it's way too early to tell whether or not this is the right suspect. And you heard him say, my client said he didn't do it. I was actually surprised to hear him say that. He really doesn't have an obligation to say anything about what his client has told him. We know that Heuermann has pled not guilty. Other than that, the rest should just remain, as far as I'm concerned. If he were the defense attorney there, or if I were, it would just remain neutral. But he's trying to, I think, do some public relations here, saying that we want a fair and impartial jury, we have a fair judge, and we're just going to wait until the evidence comes in. But I wouldn't say much more than that.
I was surprised he answered that question the way that he did as well, but he also went on to say, of course, my client is presumed innocent. And as you touched on, it's not just this DNA evidence. And if it is a hair, that will hold up better in court than something like touch DNA. But it's not just that. As the prosecution builds their case, Erielle, we know about these burner phones as well. Authorities say that they discovered Heuermann had contacted 2 of these sex workers up to a week even before his arrest. And according to what you're saying, after you talked to his ex-wife, it sounds like the entire family was just blindsided by this. It's almost like they were living with someone they didn't even know.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to why people are so transfixed by this entire case, because this is a neighborhood. I was just in this neighborhood near that home, and that neighborhood has groomed lawns, and there are people walking dogs, and it's an idyllic American neighborhood. And so when you juxtapose that with the heinous nature of these alleged crimes, Kayna, I think people are pretty dumbfounded that this could happen in essentially what could be anyone's backyard. And the wife really feels the same way, that when those investigators knocked on her front door, her life before that moment was one way, and now it is in complete tatters. And so there is this trove of evidence that was gathered at her home. So what happens next here? Investigators will continue to comb through that. They tell us that it is a long process to get all of that DNA processed through a lab and done correctly. And so there's going to be a lot on the road ahead in this investigation. We also know they're looking into any potential ties to other states where Rex Heuermann may have owned property. And they're also talking to sex workers who have come in contact with police or who police have contacted in order to see if Rex Heuermann had a pattern of reaching out to sex workers through those burner phones, allegedly, and then finding his victims in that way.
And you're looking at that map right here, and as I was saying, this really is a case that sort of spanned this country when you know that authorities were looking at places in Las Vegas as well as it goes along with this investigation. And we also know that Heuermann's a prime suspect in yet the death of a 4th woman. He has not been charged in this case, but police are saying they found at least 10 sets of human remains during this investigation. So, I mean, Terri, what could that potentially mean with this case? Does that hold that up while they investigate this to see if they need to add charges, or where do they go?
Well, I think they're going to continue investigating. And if, in fact, they can add a 4th person to that indictment, they'll issue a superseding indictment, which is something that supersedes, obviously, the original indictment, and add her name. And they are saying that this 4th victim had very similar features as the other 3. They don't have quite enough, though. So they want to wait, and they want to make sure that they have all of the evidence that they need. They want to prosecute this and have a jury who can come to a conclusion and convict him. So until they do that with that 4th one, they don't want to in any way, shape, or form harm the case. And it's apparently a strong case against the first 3 victims that they have named. So I do think they are doing the right thing. As to the others, I think there's a total of 11 people. Some are, these women who might have been sex workers is what they're saying. Others may not have been. There may have been a child, and apparently there was also one man involved. So we'll see if they can connect all of that. But they're looking for evidence to find out who did this. And if it is not Heuermann, obviously they want to find out who committed these crimes, and if there's connection, to put it all together.
And when you talk about these indictments, what do you think the likelihood is of potentially a secret grand jury instead of going public with all of this?
Well, they're saying that the grand jury is continuing to look at this information, and I think that's the right thing to do. It's secret, meaning that they're not going to tell the public what they have. They're not going to have an open evidentiary hearing. They're going to make sure that the grand jury gets what they need. And I think in this type of case, where you have such a massive amount of information expanding all throughout the United States in these different places where he may have been, and all of the internet searches, all of the burner phones, all of the DNA, the physical evidence, apparently they also have evidence of, bottles and hairs and, pizza crust. So I think what they want to do is to make sure they put that all together and put that before the grand jury so the grand jury can come to a conclusion and see all of the evidence all at the same time. So they're going to keep this going until they come to a final resolution. And I think you'll see an amended or superseding indictment, which could include at least that fourth person, if not additional individuals. Or we could also see additional indictments against other individuals.
And as Terri mentioned, the pizza crust, and you saw that picture there, a reminder that police identified him as a suspect in this case. They tracked him down and they found that abandoned pizza crust that was, thrown out in a trash can there in Manhattan. And so that is why that is so incredibly important. And Erielle, as we're talking about this case, we've talked about his wife who's filed for divorce recently. He's also a father, right? He's a suburban dad. So can you talk to us a little bit more about what this family is going through?
Yeah, it just speaks to the juxtaposition of who the family thought that Rex Heuermann was and who now prosecutors are painting Rex Heuermann as. And the family, there are 2 children involved here, one biological, one not. The older son has special needs and is said to be sleeping upright in a chair because he is so traumatized by what this family has been going through. Asa Ellerup telling us herself last night that she is waking up in the middle of the night in tears, that she hears her daughter crying, that anytime they open a box after this investigation, it provokes massive hysteria and emotion. They are distraught, they're traumatized, and they're trying to figure out what comes after this. Just one thing to mention as we're talking about the troves of evidence that I found particularly interesting is that when investigators were inside that home, they found a vault. It's been disputed whether it was a vault, a room, or a safe. Asa's attorney saying it was just a safe, but it contained more than 270 firearms underneath this house. And so you kind of have to wonder, how much did Asa know about this? I asked the attorney that, and he said they hadn't discussed it. But I think a lot of people want to know, how was this guy allegedly living such diametrically opposite lives under one roof?
Yeah, that's an incredible question, Erielle, and you're right to point that out because it does make you wonder, are there things potentially that were missed? And we'll see how this investigation goes. Erielle and Terri, our thanks to both of you. We appreciate it.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.